Well, welcome to In Focus. Today, we're looking at identity formation in today's young adults. And why is this important? Well, because identity formation leads to adulthood. And this is usually where many are choosing to walk away from their faith. Joining me is Hiemstra from the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada, who has done extensive research on this also important stage of life called emerging adulthood. Welcome, Rick. It's great to have you on the program with us. I was very interested in your research, not only from someone who's worked with youth, been a pastor, but also I have 3 emerging adults, okay? So I'm looking for answers today. Tell us a little bit in your study and this incredible, years of work, what is emerging adulthood, first of all?
So emerging adulthood is a period before people form their identities. And identities are formed when people negotiate roles in communities. And this is very important. The very big plank in their identity formation that people are looking for is career. And that's become harder and harder for people to target as they need more education, as they try to figure out what they're going to do.
Right. And I find even having kids in the 20s, right, it's harder for kids to move into, like you say, careers or jobs, hard for them to launch, so to speak, right? And that's what this study really unpacks.
So this study looks at that. And one of the other pieces of identity formation is faith formation. And what we found was that when people start to put the big pieces in place, like their career, their family, that kinds of thing, all the other things start to go into place very quickly, and their faith is one of those things.
Right, and you know, I'm sure there's people watching too that they're either experiencing this or wondering how to navigate this season, and we all want our kids to follow after the Lord, right? And we're seeing many emerging adults wandering from their faith, and was that the motivation behind this study?
Part of it was, that was part of the motivation. Part of it, what we're looking at is how can we help them to stay connected to church and faith across this transition? Because what happens is we send a lot of them off to school, and when we send them off to school, we're actually sending them out of our church communities, and they need a church community to be a part of, because if you're going to negotiate a Christian identity, you need a Christian community to negotiate a role in.
Well, that is a powerful truth, that whole importance of Christian community. Now, tell me a little bit about what kind of Christian communities are we talking about, like youth groups, camps, like what does that look like? What's helpful to them?
Well, there are a whole number of different Christian communities, but one of the important ones for young adults are obviously, if they're going to school, it'll be Christian campus groups and new churches, because often they're moving and they need to get involved in new churches.
Right. And that can be a real challenge, can it?
Yeah, what we found, though, was that churches have a really important role to play. We found that when someone from your home church tried to make a connection for you, were 4 times more likely to get involved in a Christian campus group and 3 times more likely to get involved in a new church.
That is amazing. Like, just hearing that, knowing that we have a responsibility within our churches to our young adults to make connections as they move out of the house, out of the church, into another community. That's right? And you found that really helps them keep in the way of following Christ?
It's huge, because they're going to follow Christ but they're more likely to follow Christ if they're part of a Christian community.
And I noticed that in the study when I was reading it, the role of even camps was interesting. Because sometimes we think there's a disconnect from the camp or the youth group, but it's all about mentorship, isn't it? And having those extended relationships.
Yeah, so mentorship does 4 things, I would say. So the first thing the mentors do is they come alongside someone and they help them to understand what they're good at. Because lots of young adults, they'll say, I don't know what I'm good at. Well, they really do, but what they're looking for is, where can I be successful in negotiating a role for myself?
Right.
Second thing.
Can I just say, too, that in working with youth, encouraging kids and helping them know what they're good at is really important, isn't it?
It is.
But giving them a place to use their gifts is as important.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Second thing is that mentors reintroduce the young adult to the society of adults. This is really important. If young adults have the same role in the church when they're 20 as they did when they were 14, then they're going to leave the church.
Wow, that's a real challenge for those of us in the church to make sure not only we're encouraging and calling out their giftedness, but giving them an opportunity and a role to play, right? Tell me more about the role of mentorship, how we can do that better.
Well, one of the things is you can reintroduce them by very simple things like, Joanna's good at this. Have you thought about asking Joanna if she can help with this?
Right.
Another thing that you can do is come alongside them as they renegotiate those roles. Be a negotiation aid. Sometimes things don't go smoothly in a church, and you have to help them understand what just happened and help them to get back in. And the final thing that mentors are is continuity. Because we do such great work with youth groups, but then we come along at age 18 and we tell them, no, you have to leave now. We actually kick them out of the church. We kick them out of that place
Wow.
where they have a role.
Yeah.
And so mentors,
Unfortunately, I've seen that.
so
Yeah.
mentors help them have that continuity in the church.
You know, that is such a powerful word for our time. The role of mentorship, it is deeply biblical. And we know that God works in community. And if we want our young adults to follow Christ, right, and have the consistency in their life, then we need to step up and be mentors, not only those who speak into the young adult's life, but giving them an opportunity to use their gifts and be a part of the adult community. Have I hit it on the head?
You have.
Well, I'm going to go home and put it into practice, so I encourage you that at your churches and your community, that we together help our young adults renegotiate their faith in this generation.